It's been a wild weekend talking about collusion and the FBI and what the memo means. And I'd like to remind people again, I don't know how many times we have to go over it, that real collusion has already happened. Real collusion has already happened several times. And for me, it's really maddening to see that this White House has to deal with the type of bullshit that is just I'm trying to set up this presentation, but it's all generated by the media. That's basically what's going on. And if they really cared at all about collusion or anything like that, I would say that that they've had all the evidence for decades that a president colluded actively with a foreign power, and they didn't do anything. And the FBI did virtually nothing to, you know, the FBI did virtually nothing to hold President Clinton accountable for his actions with respect to the Chinese government. Okay, let's see if I can get this to work, this piece of shit. So let me see if I can. Here we go. So we have Year of the Rat. I started doing it, doing a presentation on it last time. There's Year of the Rat Part 1. You can find it at one of the links below. I think it's the last link with the word new before it. It's not so new now, but for those of you that haven't been following along, it definitely is new. So when we last left off, we were talking about the large network of illegal campaign donations and donors from China that were basically propping up the Clinton and Gore campaigns. This didn't start in 1996, but it really ramped up during that period, mostly because Clinton was struggling to finance his early ad campaign conducted by Dick Morris. So in this segment, we're going to talk a little more about who these people are and exactly how they helped President Clinton. So in September 1995, former Hillary Clinton law partner Joe Girard, he figures prominently in Webb Hubbell's book. He was another law partner of hers. Intercedes on behalf of John Huang to get him a job on the DNC fundraising team. For those of you that missed last episode, I'll briefly say John Huang was a connected official of the Riyadi Lipro Group, which was a Chinese-linked Indonesian bank, and he was integral to funneling money from the Riyadis to the Clinton and Gore campaign. So Girard went to the DNC and its chairman, Doug Fowler, and demanded for Huang a job on the DNC as a fundraiser. So what you have to understand here is that a foreign national was trying to get a seat on the DNC. So the Clintons had one of Hillary's former law partners, Joe Girard, a corporate lawyer from Arkansas, go to the DNC and say, well, you might want to have this guy on your team. You might want to have him there. Trying to find a way to represent this differently. Fuck. No, I don't want it like this. This is awful. No. Well, at least this is better. So at the time, Doug Fowler said, well, no, we don't want somebody like this. We don't want somebody who will basically be a liability, who has all this suspect shit against him, who actually doesn't really speak I think John Wayne was one of the people who didn't really speak a ton of English either, and could be wrong. So he refused. So Clinton sent his deputy chief of staff, Harold Ickes, to put a little pressure on him. Harold Ickes was, basically a hard left member of the Democratic Party. His father had been Secretary of the Interior under um, under President Roosevelt, and basically Clinton needed somebody else to lean on Doug Fowler to give a little more of a role to John Wang. Okay, let's see a picture of Harold Ickes. I didn't include one in the presentation, but this is just for. So this is a guy, and Ickes didn't get what he wanted either. So President Clinton went to. He decided it was so important to get John Huang a chair on the finance committee of the DNC that he actually went to Marvin Rosen, the finance chair of that committee, and forced him to hire John Huang. That's how important it was that President Clinton himself, his Majesty, the guy who wouldn't stop getting an entertaining cigar display from Monica Lewinsky, despite Yasser Arafat being in a neighboring room waiting for him. He thought it was important enough that he should go see the head of the DNC or the head of the finance committee, Marvin Rosen, and force him to hire Huang. And then, according to the LA Times, so that information was in the Thompson Committee report in the Senate. Fred Thompson, Republican senator for Tennessee, and it was based on an interview by these authors of Marvin Rosen, a former Democratic National Committee official. So people knew of the Clintons and their undying love of Chinese money. So I guess we'll have to go back to this shitty view, but that's all I can do now. I remember last time it was a little better. I don't know how the hell we were able to. Okay, so you might remember that last time we did discuss the Xi Temple, where the Clintons raised a ton of money for their campaign, and the Xi Buddhist Temple was used to launder $150,000 in favor of Democratic candidates in 1996. $116,000 of that went to Clinton Gore campaign of 1996, and Maria Xia, who is pictured in here, participated in 6 Democratic Party fundraisers in 1996, including one for Senator Ted Kennedy. Okay, and Gore denied knowing that the Temple event was a fundraiser. So what happened here was that basically the Democratic Party was in deep with a number of these donors, and that's one of the reasons that I believe this scandal did not go as far as it could have gone in terms of being enforced by the law, because some of the people that were involved were a little too, sexy for the law, such as Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy, he had a lot of pull with law enforcement, could have probably weaseled out of anything, and he was not a tremendous friend of the Clintons, but if there was something that they were involved in that he could have been implicated in as well, then I don't believe that the FBI would have done a terribly efficient job of prosecuting him or of pursuing the trial, pursuing a conviction, whatever you want to call it. But Maria Xia did end up taking a huge bite from this. I think she was convicted. some of these people were convicted in, let me see here. I wrote by mistake Marissa. But yes, on February 18th, 1998, Maria Xia was indicted. And I'll show you the indictment too. It's from the Department of Justice. So this woman who Al Gore was hanging out with at a table at a Buddhist temple fundraiser, it says the indictment charges Xia, a Los Angeles immigration consultant and Democratic National Committee fundraiser, with conspiring to defraud the United States and causing the submission of false statements to the Federal Election Commission. The International Buddhist Progress Society, commonly known as the Xi Lai Temple, was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. The temple is located in Hacienda Heights, California. This is yet another step forward in the Justice Department's investigation of campaign finance abuses associated with the 1996 election, said Reno. On January 29th, the task force secured an indictment of Charlie Tree and Antonio Pan. Tree figures pretty prominently in this, on charges relating to their fundraising activities. Last year, the task force obtained guilty pleas from Democratic fundraisers Nora and Jean Lum, their daughter Tricia, and Michael Brown for illegal fundraising activities. So those things that I'm talking about that are mentioned here, which are not directly connected to this case, do figure prominently in the Ron Brown scandal at the Department of Commerce. So you can see that people were starting to notice, yeah, this is happening pretty often. And this was the Clinton Justice Department. This was Janet Reno. It's not as if he was being pursued only by, by crazy Republican, Bible thumping fanatics. But the fact is that this indictment was of the fundraiser. It wasn't for the actual campaign. If we look at it logically, why is it that the person who funneled the money, Maria Xia, was convicted and not, or indicted in this case, and not the people who received the money, the Clinton Gore campaign and the DNC? I guess some people don't understand that for some crimes it requires two sides for there to be any crime accomplished. Now, in this segment, there's also an issue of a couple other female lead roles. And the other one, besides Maria Xia, was Pauline Kanchanalak, who was a Thai citizen connected to China, who helped funnel $679,000 to the DNC through, you know what, I might as well just do it like this. Holy crap. No, I guess I might as well just present the screen. Sorry, everybody. Hope you can see this. So it says, China-connected Thai businesswoman Pauline Kanchanalak, and her indictment is in the link. I posted the link to this entire presentation in the description below. So if you want to go there, there's some of these things are linked to the source, and her indictment with the Department of Justice is there. She helped funnel $679,000 to the Democratic National Committee through Chinese arms smuggler Wang Jun. John Huang insisted on having a coffee session with Kanchanalak and other donors and White House personnel on June 22nd, 1996, despite DNC apprehensions. The coffee session included, and this is on page 80, so the coffee session included Kanchanalak, Huang, and members of the CP group. So let's go read a little segment of that. How about you guys join me? It says, everything about June 18th, 1996, White House coffee organized by Pauline Kanchanalak ultimately became controversial. Who the guests were, what they wanted, where it occurred, whether money was solicited on White House grounds, and all the foreign money flowing in and around it. DNC officials must have felt uncomfortable about this event because they initially tried to fight it off. So this is the DNC officials like Doug Fowler who are saying, what the fuck is going on? Why are the Clintons having us get involved with all of these China-linked donors? But John Huang, then the financial vice chair of the DNC, was insistent. So this is by now he is involved directly in the DNC. So, they have to some degree, listen to him. He told one DNC official, Pauline has been a big contributor, a big supporter. It goes back to Ron Brown, and she's very high maintenance. The DNC caved, and Pauline got her way, and the CP group of Thailand had an opportunity to meet Clinton in the White House. So in a second, we'll get to who the CP group is. They're actually the largest corporation in Thailand today. I think they're worth $47 or $45 billion when I checked. So, this is information from the Thompson report. So it says, so who's the CP group of Thailand? You can see their logo to the right on the presentation. Let's go back. So you can see the CP group. There's their logo, obviously. So who's the CP group of Thailand? A business conglomerate dominated by an ethnic Chinese family. The CP group started in the wholesale chicken business. The group paid Thai farmers to raise chickens and then marketed the meat around the country. In some mysterious fashion during the early 1980s, the CP group managed to accumulate enough capital for an enormous expansion of its Thai business and to move into China. By the time of the White House coffee, the CP group was the largest foreign investor in China. Its major partner on the mainland was Norinco, the arms merchant, whose own logo is fishy beer. They have some very impressive assault rifles and automatic weapons on their website. I actually took a look at it earlier. Other companies operating in China were in awe of the CP group's mainland connections. The CP group was declared unbeatable by one Singapore-based joint venture partner. CP group executives served as economic advisors to the People's Republic of China government, and they sat on the Beijing-picked handover committee for Hong Kong. So basically, you have Clinton meeting with officials of this group, which are basically intermediaries between the communist Chinese government and the rest of the world, corporate intermediaries. And what's the subject? Campaign donations. And it actually says, the CP group also has other, even more questionable foreign business ties. During the Thompson Committee investigation in 1997, one senator asked the CIA if the CP group does business with or in Iran, Iraq, Syria, or Libya. The CIA gave only a classified answer. If its information had been innocuous, it would have said so, meaning it would have said no. Therefore, we have to conclude that the CP group is in business with terrorist nations. Okay, so for what it's worth, they did have links to some of these countries. Also controversial was the overtly Asian flavor of the White House coffee. At first, Huang and Kanchanalak wanted to limit the invitation to just her clients. But someone noticed that Clinton would be appearing before a foreign audience, none of whom could legally donate to the Democrats. At the last moment, a pair of wealthy legal DNC donors were added, perhaps for appearance's sake. The coffee held in the map room of the White House was opened by DNC Chairman Fowler, who compared Clinton to Abraham Lincoln. So there's a funny part. John Huang, for his part, made an open pitch for money to the chairman of Thailand's CP group in Clinton's presence. So President Clinton was there, and he heard John Huang say this. He said, elections cost money, lots of money, and I am sure that every person in the room will want to support the re-election of President Clinton. Do you understand that? That in front of the president, a DNC official, John Huang, who was personally shoehorned into the DNC by Clinton and some of his aides, including Harold Ickes, his deputy chief of staff. He's asking for for donations from a foreign donor. Basically somebody who's not legally allowed to donate to the Clinton campaign. The law prohibiting campaign solicitations in federal buildings, 18 U.S. Criminal Code 607, makes no exception for any room in the White House. Furthermore, since the CP Group executives were not American citizens, soliciting them for campaign funds would have been legally dubious, even if done at DNC headquarters. So there's two crimes here. One is the people who were donating, who were foreign nationals, not authorized to give political donations in the United States. And second, where they did it. They did it in the White House tea room, or whatever room this was, in the White House. So this was young. So let's go back to the presentation. I know this might be annoying for some of you, but it helps me organize my notes. So you're just going to have to deal with it. So this was all 1 year after Norinco. Remember, Norinco is linked to the CP Group, who were present at this meeting. So this is a year after they were caught by federal agents smuggling 1,000 automatic machine guns into the USA to be distributed to gangs. Okay, this is on page 81. So then you get to some of the weird parts. You have Nina Wang, Asia's richest woman, who also was linked through a $50,000 donation to refurbishing Bill Clinton's childhood home in Arkansas. This is on page 82. Okay. She has a pretty weird story herself, and you can see from the photo that I think she's dead now. She died in 2008 of some sort of long battle with cancer. But this was a woman who married this billionaire, Teddy Huang, Teddy Wang, and he was kidnapped. They were both kidnapped in 1983. He was kidnapped again in 1990 and murdered, and nobody has ever seen his body again, which doesn't have anything to do with this topic, but it's just an interesting story. Just like that interesting photo of her with whatever the hell that doll is. And it might be a doll that was made of her. So Wang was a top donor, not just the $50,000 for refurbishing Clinton's childhood home in Hope, Arkansas, but she donated $7 million for People's Liberation Army of China Officers Scholarships Program at Harvard University, which included people who would participate in the Tiananmen Square massacre. Now, we don't know if she actually donated to the campaign, because the people who would have handled it, John Huang and White House aide Mark Middleton, who was eventually, there's a little more to come about him. They pleaded the fifth with regard to any questions about her donating any campaign money. So we don't know if she did or she did not donate illegally to the Clinton-Gore campaign of 1996. But there ought to be some information about that by today. That we should be able to find that out, despite the fact that she's passed away. And, Huang, I think, no longer lives in the U.S. I think he probably got out of prison since he got convicted. But the American people ought to know whether they had a president who was receiving campaign donations from, yet another Chinese billionaire connected to the People's Republic of China. Next, you have an even worse case of corruption. Nina Wang, I think she was also involved in human trafficking, but this person, Inglip Seng, was for sure known to be a human trafficker and prostitution businessman in the Portuguese colony of Macau. Macau is now part of China, but it used to be just this enclave of Portuguese influence or it was controlled by Portugal on the southern coast of China. And on 4 occasions, Inglop Sang met with White House Chief of Staff aide Mark Milton. He was an aide to Mac McLarty, who was Clinton's first chief of staff when he went into the White House. And he gave large amounts of cash sums to the Clinton-Gore 96 campaign, despite the November 16th, 1996 LA Times article claiming he was barred from misrepresenting his rank in the White House. Milton had facilitated a February 18th meeting between Clinton and Ng. So let me see if I can find that one. I have one by James Risen. So yes, I do have one. And I'll show it to you in a second. So this is available from the LA Times. It's by Sarah Fritz from November 16th, 1996. And it says White House officials announced Friday that they had found evidence that Mark Milton, a former presidential aide, abused his White House access to impress his business clients. He has been barred from entering the executive mansion without high-level approval, they said. The decision came in response to indications that Milton, a former aide to presidential advisor Thomas F. Mac McLarty, had flaunted his White House connections in an effort to become an international deal maker. Among other things, he is accused of using his White House business cards and keeping a voicemail message on the White House telephone system long after he had left his job there. He also is accused of taking business clients to the White House dining room without authorization and portraying himself as someone with influence among President Clinton's inner circle. The announcement also reflected an effort on the part of the president to take affirmative steps in response to the burgeoning controversy over illegal and questionable fundraising for the Democratic Party. While Milton may prove to be little more than a bit player in the fundraising saga, revelation of his actions caused the White House considerable embarrassment at a time when it is trying to fend off the scandal. Before Milton left the White House in February 1995, he was the chief aide to McLarty, who served initially as White House chief of staff and later as senior presidential advisor. McLarty chose Milton as his deputy after watching the young man work as a fundraiser for Clinton in Arkansas in 1992. Milton, who's 32 at the time, a former Little Rock lawyer, also was a friend of Democratic fundraiser John Huang, who was responsible for raising millions of dollars from Asian American sources, some of which has been returned by the Democratic Party because it was from illegal or questionable sources. According to a political consultant in Taiwan, Milton discussed the possibility of accepting an illegal $15 million contribution for the Democratic campaign from an official of the ruling Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party, in Taipei. Both he and Kuomintang officials have denied the allegation. Milton issued a statement Friday acknowledging that questions have been raised about whether I misused access to the White House for personal gain. I categorically deny any implication that I acted improperly. So we have this guy who's basically been being used as the whipping boy for the Clintons to deflect from their illegal activities. Now remember, in the previous slides, I did discuss the fact that it wasn't people under Clinton tried to get John Huang a position on the Democratic Finance Committee, but when Doug Fowler refused, eventually Clinton himself went to the chair of the Finance Committee, Marvin Rosen, and demanded that Huang be given a seat. So this has nothing to do. You can't put this issue on Mark Middleton. Middleton wasn't acting of his own accord. He was acting on behalf of people that were more senior in the White House, including President Clinton himself. So Ng was later convicted of providing a $500,000 bribe to John Ash, who was the UN General Assembly president. That's the guy in the photo with Inglop Sang. On the left is John Ash, and on the right is Inglep Singh. Okay, so in total, he donated $330,000 in cash and $1 million in wire transfers through fellow Clinton middleman Charlie Tree. This is on page 98. This is to the Clinton-Gore campaign in 1996. Also, Hong Kong gambling magnate and Inglep Singh associate Stanley Ho contributed $500,000 to the FDR memorial through Clinton. So this is another case where, you know, the Clintons are accepting money for certain things. I don't know why, but I guess technically you could say that the FDR memorial would not be an illegal cause to accept money for. But Stanley Ho was involved with Nina Huang, the subject of one of the previous slides, and you know, it's a good question whether he had more involvement in the Clinton campaign than is presently revealed to the public. Now, there's another guy, Ted Chiang, the guy with the you know, crazy sideburns. Now, in the FBI scandal of 1996, Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania, who was then a Republican, later under Obama, he defected to the Democrats because he finally broke. He rebuked the Bureau for not acting on info regarding Chinese donations to the Clinton-Gore 96 campaign despite holding ample evidence. Ted Chiang, who is an Indonesian with Chinese connection, donated $400,000 to the DNC illegally. Should be two L's. Sorry about that. Chiang sat at tables with both Bill Clinton and Al Gore during the 96 campaign. Chiang was known by the CIA to be connected to Beijing through the embassy, through the LA consulate, and direct visits while owning a hotel in LA. Chiang and Ng have both been involved in human trafficking and prostitution. Okay, so those are both known human traffickers, and they contributed plenty of money to the DNC. In 1994, Chinese-Cambodian narcotics trafficker Theng Bun Ma received permission to enter the USA twice, despite State Department warnings, thanks to the Clinton administration and intercession. So they gave special permission to this guy, who's not the guy in the photo, that's still Ted Chiang, but to this Theng Bun Ma character, who was a drug trafficker, to enter the USA. Now, if you read a lot about the Clintons, especially their Arkansas connections, for some reason they love being around narcotics traffickers. And I want to ask, you know, if anybody in the audience wants to, you know, comment, if they have such an affinity to people who traffic cocaine, and in this case probably heroin because it's Cambodia, and Cambodia is right next to Laos where there's a ton of heroin. Why didn't they just legalize drugs? I mean, they were in office, they could have just legalized drugs, but no. They just want to be around illegal drug traffickers. So Theng attended the National Prayer Breakfast where President Clinton was present in honor of Mother Teresa. That was the first visit. He later appeared with an official Cambodian delegation, but was not present at any of their events, and no explanation was ever given for his presence to begin with. So nobody knows why this person who was screened by the State Department and considered a risk because of his narcotics association, nobody knows why he was given permission to enter the USA, because obviously he was allowed to come in, and he came with the Cambodian delegation the second time, but for some reason wasn't with them for anything. So what's the deal? Literally, what's the deal? So I think that, you know, that's it for the information for today. There will be more to come. And I'll show you the last slide in the presentation, which says exactly that. You know, stay tuned for part 3, because this is not the end of the. First of all, we've talked a lot about the donors. We've talked about the groundwork. You know, how Clinton and Gore became involved with these donors. You know, long before the '96 campaign. But the next few, I think there might be 3 more chapters left of this series on my channel. We're going to have to deal with the effects of them. You know, what exactly did the Chinese get in return? I mean, we've been talking a lot about the money that they gave. We've been talking a lot about how these people were associated with one another and how, there's corporate and government level uh, government level associations between these Chinese billionaires and their government and our government. But I think that people have to realize that once you see what exactly transpired, what the Chinese received in return, it's pretty obvious that the Clintons did everything they could to bury this scandal. And it's possible that both parties were complicit because they didn't want to deal with the reality that an American president helped a foreign power, which was our greatest rival in the 90s. China, definitely passed Russia as being the second most powerful military uh, on the planet. They didn't want to deal with the reality that we'd been sold out to them by our own president. So that's all I have for tonight. Please leave your comments below. Please check any of the links below. Check the presentation. There's some more information in there based on a few links that I put in there. And let me know what you think. Definitely pick up Year of the Rat by Howard Edward Timberlake and William C. Triplett II. I posted a link to that. And we'll see you next time.